So when you think of Easter Island or Rapa Nui, you probably picture this, right? These giant stone heads staring out at the ocean, the last remnants of a mysterious society that just destroyed itself. It's a powerful story, a real cautionary tale for our times. But what if that story, the one we all think we know, is just plain wrong? Let's get into the real history of Rapa Nui.
I mean, just look at them. These are the Moai, and they have stood here for centuries. They've seen everything. They were silent witnesses to an incredible drama of ingenuity, of resilience, and a catastrophe that came from a direction nobody saw coming. And as we're about to find out, the science, the data, tells a story that is way more complicated than the simple version we've all been told.
Okay, so this is the version of the story that really blew up, mostly thanks to Jared Diamond's huge bestseller, Collapse. It's this super dramatic narrative about ecocide. You know, a society so obsessed with carving and moving these statues that they cut down every single last tree and basically brought about their own doom. And you know, it's easy to see why this story caught on. It works as this perfect, tidy little parable for our whole planet. A warning about being short-sighted and causing your own collapse. The theory is pretty straightforward. It says there was a huge population, maybe 15,000 people, and they just burned through all their resources. The logic went like this. No more trees meant no more big canoes to go fishing, the topsoil washed away, the crops failed, and the whole society just spiraled into violence and warfare. And all this supposedly happened before the first European ships even appeared on the horizon in 1722. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because over the last couple of decades, scientists have been putting together a totally different picture of what happened on Rapa Nui. And this new evidence, it challenges pretty much every single piece of that classic ecocide story. We're now in a position to actually rewrite the history of this island, and not based on old myths or assumptions, but on cold, hard data straight from the ground and from the DNA of the very first people who lived there. So what you have are two completely opposite stories. On one hand, you've got the familiar tale of reckless self-destruction, but on the other, there's this new theory emerging, a story not about failure, but about incredible resilience and amazing adaptation, a story that was tragically cut short by forces from the outside. So how are we getting to this brand new story? Well, it's really built on three key pillars of new evidence. What genetics can tell us about how many people lived there, what soil records show us about what really happened to the trees, and what new archaeological finds tell us about how the Rapa Nui actually lived. All right, first up, the trees. And yes, the island was absolutely deforested. No one disputes that. But it wasn't just people with axes. See, when the first Polynesians got to the island, they accidentally brought along stowaways, Polynesian rats. With no natural predators, the rat population exploded, and they ate all the seeds of the giant palm trees. So it wasn't just about people cutting the forest down, a biological invasion was preventing it from ever growing back. So, with the landscape changing, what did they do? Did they starve? No, they adapted. The Rapa Nui got incredibly clever. They created these amazing agricultural systems using a technique called stone mulching. They literally covered huge areas with volcanic rocks to protect the soil, keep moisture in, and release nutrients. This isn't a sign of desperation. This is sophisticated, sustainable farming. What's emerging from the archaeological record isn't a picture of chaos. It's a picture of a clever, resilient people who engineered brilliant solutions to not just survive, but to thrive in a really challenging environment. Okay, so if the Rapa Nui didn't collapse on their own, what in the world happened? Well, the data is now pointing to a very different culprit. Take a look at this. This chart is really the smoking gun. It plots how many sites people were living in over time, and far from showing a collapse before 1722, it shows a population that was stable, even growing. The peak in activity, you can see it right there, happens well after 1650. The crash, that dramatic nosedive on the right, that happens after the Europeans arrive. And it's not just one piece of evidence. Brand new genetic analysis completely backs this up. The whole story of a massive population of 15,000 people, it seems to be a myth. The DNA suggests it was a much smaller, sustainable population of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people. And their civilization was doing just fine right up until the middle of the 19th century. The real collapse wasn't some slow-motion train wreck. It was fast, and it was brutal. Things really took a turn in the 1860s. Peruvian slave traders raided the island and kidnapped a massive part of the population.
Those slavers and other visitors also brought diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis, which the Rapa Nui had absolutely no immunity to. And the result is just staggering. From a thriving community of thousands, the population plummeted to just about 110 people. This wasn't ecocide, this was genocide and the horrifying impact of disease. But that still leaves one huge, Moai-sized question. If there was only a small population and they didn't have giant logs to use as rollers, how did they move these massive statues? Well, the answer once again points to incredible ingenuity, not brute force. Remember, the ecocide theory needed that massive population to explain all the labor it would take to roll statues on logs. So, if the population was actually small and the big trees were gone, how on earth did they do it? Well, it turns out they made them walk. Archaeologists have shown that the statues were actually engineered to be moved standing up. By tying ropes to them, small teams could rock a moai from side to side, essentially walking it forward. Think about how you'd move a heavy refrigerator across your kitchen. It's kind of like that, but on a giant scale. And they proved it. This isn't just a theory. In a recent experiment, it took only 18 people just 40 minutes to walk a 4.5-ton replica a full 100 meters. You didn't need a massive disposable workforce for this. You just needed to understand physics. So in the end, the way they moved the moai is just more proof of how sophisticated they were. It didn't require destroying their environment. It required intelligence, cooperation, and some seriously clever engineering. But the story of Rapa Nui doesn't just end in the 19th century. After surviving their own environmental hurdles and a near-total destruction of their people, the island's incredible heritage is now facing a new global threat. And here's the ultimate irony. After everything, the Moai are now facing a real-life ecological crisis. The very environment that the Rapa Nui learned to master is now turning against their legacy. More extreme weather patterns linked to global climate change are causing wildfires and torrential rains that are literally washing away the soft volcanic rock the statues are made from. You see, the story of Easter Island isn't a simple parable about self-destruction. It's a much more complicated and honestly a much more inspiring story about human resilience. The people of Rapa Nui faced their challenges and they found solutions. The question that leaves us with is, will we?